Just to reflect back on a comment that the Chief Director, Mr. Matabula, made earlier, solutions in the environmental space particularly involve multiple partners. No one can do it on their own. And every partner has a particular role that they need to contribute to that. So in our business, for example, we are collectors of recyclables, mostly paper, plastics, glass, essentially packaging recyclable materials. And we collect these materials for the purpose of supplying our own operations, our own paper mills, etc. And so our interest is in a sustainable supply chain, which means that you want that material to be flowing consistently over long periods of time. And to get that, you need sustainable businesses at the supply point all across the country that are providing that. And then this is where our business starts to intersect with things that are not really so much business related, but perhaps social related. How do you get people to behave in a manner that is good for the environment, that is good for society, ultimately good for themselves? And although there's a lot of comment about whether people are rational or not, sometimes they're not. They do things that matter, that make sense to them, that might not be rational in any other sense. I mean, people take drugs. It's not a rational thing to do, but it makes sense for them at that particular time. And the challenges we have in particular things like communities is how do you persuade people to, say from the one project, pick up your organic waste from home and take it to school. There's a convenience factor there, there's a smell that you've got to deal with, all these factors that come into that. And I think there's a great opportunity for people to understand how do you make people participate in a process like that that has such a great social good. And we know from our own experience it's incredibly difficult to do that. We've run, for many years, ran a school's collection process for paper. And we eventually had to close it earlier this year. And for a multiple number of reasons, but eventually it just became too expensive to sustain. And I think some of the reports talked about the cost of logistics, which is a major challenge in any environmental projects that you'd be taking on. And I think the challenge about that is, what's the best way to collect material? So a traditional logistics process, you go from a high concentration, you go from the factory, you package your material, you then distribute it to, say, wholesalers, who distribute further to shops. The environmental or the recycling game particularly is the exact opposite of that. So you're starting with tiny volumes. And in our business, we buy by the kilogram. And we collect 700 million kilograms of material. So that's a lot of transactions that happen. But you won't need to get from kilogram from every household, consolidate that again and again and again. And each of those consolidation points is an opportunity for a business. Particularly like in a community, informal community opportunity, say, set up a buyback center that creates income for communities, it creates jobs for people in that community. And so you start to consolidate those together, and eventually you build up a sizable volume of material. And apart from providing, helping to build that supply chain, we provide a market. Because if you're going to have a sustainable process, you need someone to want that material. And very often the challenge we have, and I think it's particularly in the plastics environment, solutions for various materials are not readily available. So in South Africa, there's a lot of recycling of PET bottles. It's been a wonderful success story. You mentioned earlier in your report that only 1% of waste in South Africa is recycled. Well, in the packaging industry, substantially higher than 1% is recovered. Cardboard boxes, for example, over 80% of them are recovered in South Africa. PET, I think, I'll forget the latest number. Anabi, we have the foremost plastics recycling expert in our midst here. That's probably over close to 70% now on 6. That's a remarkable achievement in the period of probably 10 years. And so once a solution's found, it creates a demand. The demand creates an income stream that flows all the way down. And that's really the challenge. LD plastics, for example, low-density polyethylene, great demand for that product. And so you have a constant offtake. Polystyrene, a bit more difficult. And those are the sort of challenges that we have to find for those products that are difficult to recycle. Perhaps recycling is not the solution. There might be other ways of dealing with those materials. So I think I've covered most of the topics that came to mind, but I'm really enthused when people apply their minds to these sort of projects, try and create solutions. And you know, we spend a lot of our time. We have a recycling business, and we also have a waste management business. And our waste management business is about finding solutions. And the more people are thinking about these things, the more optimistic we are that we'll find ways to resolve so many of the problems that we have. So again, congratulations and thank you so much for your presentations, most appreciated. And thank you, GIBS, for inviting us.
I've just noted a few points here in terms of just general innovation. Although my expertise are both in wastewater, a bit of sanitation, but again in organic waste management. So we used to design solution for social impact, looking at how to better manage your organic waste, turning it into energy. I mean, you would firstly study the environment, the culture, before designing an innovation. That is very important and very key. I know with a lot of government stakeholders, when they have funding, they prefer implementation, but you forget that there needs to be a feasibility study that has to be done to study the community, to study the diversity, to study the culture. For example, with organic waste, if we were to say we wanted to be in a community where kids bring the organic waste to school, there is cultures, and that does not allow that. We've been in a community where collecting cow dung, bringing it to school is not allowed. It also plays in terms of gender as well. In other areas, women are not allowed to handle cow dung. They are not even allowed to go to the kraal to do anything that has to do with cows. Other cultures believe they'll be bewitched. I mean, if you know there's witchcraft, you can't take this and that. So it's very important when you're designing, because this is for social impact. Understand. That's why they say you are you are just a movement by yourself, but you are a force when we are together. Meaning they need to be community representative. They need to be government stakeholders that will advise on policy and funding. They also need to be research institutions. They need to be academia that will do research, feasibility study. Is it feasible for the environment that you want to apply this technology? And I know technology makes life easier, but there are quick wins. Behavior. What do you think about behavior? If you look at saying, okay, responsible consumption, what is your response as an individual? We are the consumers, we are the producers of waste. What is our responsibility in terms of climate change as individual? Then moving to my second point, which is education and awareness. I cannot change what I do not know. I need to be educated, I need to, you know, I need to be informed. If you say, yes, separate a source, if I'm not informed, how would I do that? Yes, we can provide the technology to do that. I know some of the institutions would have been written this and that, but people do not follow that because they were not informed. It's typical of project managers to install or introduce technology without education and training. Then it becomes this big elephant in the community. Then that's where they vandalize the technology. I know in one area when we're doing a feasibility study on biodigesters in different areas, one of the digesters was just a big bin where everyone is just throwing nappies. You know, it was not designed for that. Because you get into a community, you think, oh yeah, a digester here would work. Do they even have enough organic waste for that? Some of the cultures, they use your animal waste traditionally to do the flooring. Some of the guys would understand. So you also have to educate them and understand and count in terms of how much organic waste is present. And again, going to what is the norms of the community, some of these activities are not seen as dignified, but through education and awareness, we get to understand. Now with the waste speakers, still you perceive as someone who's poor, not as an entrepreneur that will respect to say, this is waste from worth. So I think from this presentation, what I take out or my comment will be designing a solution or a technology, sometimes you also have to look at quick wins, you know, education and awareness. Signages to say, please do not dump here, you know, do this with your water. Water the plant with grey water, or you know, things like that. For example, if you get into, this is the example I like to use in terms of quick wins and signages. You get to a mall, You go to the loom, there's 2 buttons there, a small one, a big one. There's no signage as to say what you should do with the buttons. So typical of me, I'll be pressing everything because I just want to flash. But if it was just a signage to say, business number 1, this one, business number 2, this one, a mall will save how many liters of water? So you see, quick wins. Yes, we like innovation, we like importing, exporting, you know, bringing things in and out. But first, let's understand the culture. Let's understand, you know, also deal with a bit of quick wins, education and training, and hold people accountable. Because with the technology comes responsibility, the ownership. They need to own it. They need to understand it.